What if Pushkin won the duel with Dante's? A foggy morning on the Black River envelops the snow-covered shore, the ice creaks underfoot, and the breath of Pushkin and Dante's turns to steam, mixing with the frosty air. The two men stand facing each other, hands trembling, hearts pounding, and all around there is silence, broken only by the creaking of weapons and the gentle murmur of water. A shot rings out simultaneously, and Dante's bullet grazes Pushkin's shoulder, causing a sharp pain. But the poet instantly parries with his blade, deftly rolls through the snow, and counterattacks, his movement precise and unexpected. Dante's loses his balance, falls to his side, and Pushkin's lunge leaves him a clear warning. He will not win here. Pushkin understands that open reprisal could have cost him his life, but now power is in his hands, and he decides not to kill Dante's, leaving his enemy in shock and trepidation, so that fear and respect become part of a new game. He takes the opportunity to retreat into the fog, hiding among the snowdrifts and icy mounds, watching as Dante's, consumed by rage, gathers his weapons and tries to regain control. But Pushkin is already planning his next move, a path to survival and strategic victory through the city, intrigues and allies. Petersburg breathes cold and fog, narrow streets, lanterns, empty squares. Everything turns into a field for a hidden game, where Pushkin begins to use his wit and connections to gather information about the conspirators, to track which of the nobles is ready to support Dante's, and who will become an ally. He secretly meets with trusted people who bring letters, rumors, and information about the enemy's plans, turning literary skill and the ability to observe into a weapon, and the city streets into a strategic board.
Every step on the snow-covered pavements, every glance, every encounter with people becomes part of a complex plan. He sets up a network of allies to deceive the enemy, uses letters and rumors for disinformation, and he himself moves stealthily, anticipating where Dante's might set up an ambush and which streets will help him stay out of reach. Night falls on Petersburg, the street lamps cast long shadows, and Pushkin, observing the enemy's movements from the roof of one of the houses, understands that victory in the duel was only the beginning. Ahead lies a game of intrigue, cunning, and courage, where every ally, every street, every whisper on the stairs can be decisive. In order to finally secure himself and use the victory to strengthen his influence, the poet transforms the city into an arena of strategic art, where knowledge, observation, and mastery of words become weapons no less powerful than the blade. And the fear of Dante's and his allies turns into Pushkin's instrument, establishing a new order, where the winner is the one who manages to survive, outstrip the enemy, and turn Petersburg into his own chessboard, on which every move is calculated and every action has consequences. After winning the duel, Pushkin does not remain in one place. Knowing that Dante's will not calm down and will look for any way to take revenge, he immediately begins to act covertly, slowly moving along the narrow and snowy streets of St. Petersburg, watching the shadows of nobles, servants, and possible informants, assessing which of them can be on the side of the enemy and who will become an ally. Using his literary connections and respect in the salons, Pushkin sends secret letters, passes hints to confidants, arranges meetings, turning the city into a complex chessboard, where every step, every look, every conversation is a strategic tool. He sets traps and provocations to check who will betray and who will follow Dante's, while studying the enemy's routes, anticipating where ambushes can be set up, and which streets will help stay out of reach. One evening, he watches Dante's from the roof of an old house, seeing him move along the lamplit streets, looking back and checking letters, and understands that the enemy trusts only himself and those who are ready to act on the edge. Then Pushkin decides to use dexterity and ingenuity, setting up small provocations, fake letters, hints at meetings that will never take place, false witnesses and evidence. All this makes Dante's rush about, lose control, make mistakes and act impulsively. At the same time, Pushkin himself moves around the city, meets with trusted people in quiet salons, discussing further steps, passing on information, and simultaneously deceiving the enemy, turning the city into a field of intrigue and hidden games, where the light of lanterns and fog become allies, and snowy alleys, traps. Gradually, Pushkin begins to control events. Dante's loses the initiative. His attempts to set up repeated ambushes end in failure. The allies retreat, and the poet uses every slightest movement of the enemy to strengthen his position, identify traitors, and protect himself, while simultaneously creating the appearance of fear and caution, which the enemy perceives as weakness.
By the end of the block, Petersburg seems to come alive as a labyrinth, where Pushkin is a master player, using every house, every lamppost, every alley, every rumor as a weapon. And Dante's finds himself increasingly locked in his own mistakes, making wrong moves, allowing Pushkin to strengthen his control over the situation, turning a personal victory in a duel into strategic superiority, and creating a feeling that the city itself becomes the poet's ally, where every step and every decision leads to final victory, and mastery of words and observation becomes stronger than weapons, turning intrigue and cunning into the key to survival and superiority over the enemy. Pushkin, having collected all the information about the conspirators and allies of Dante's, decides to act decisively and turns the city into a trap for the enemy. He sends letters with false meetings, leaves evidence in the alleys, telling Dante's the way, and at the same time gathers his allies from literary salons, trusted servants, and even random passers-by who can help at a critical moment. One evening, he watches Dante's movements from the roof of an old house and sees how the enemy, blinded by self-confidence and information, succumbs to provocations, goes along a pre-prepared route, and ends up in a narrow alley, where Pushkin has positioned his people in advance and prepared several hidden ambushes.
Icy snowdrifts and fog hide the true number of the poet's supporters, and the streets themselves seem to come alive, supporting the plan. Dante's is surprised to notice that his movement is controlled. Every step meets resistance, unexpected obstacles, and hidden figures. And Pushkin quietly directs his allies to block escape routes and ensure superiority. The intrigue reaches its climax when the enemy, realizing that he has fallen into a trap, tries to act impulsively. But his every maneuver is predicted. His allies are confused. Betrayal is revealed. And Pushkin uses this moment for the final demonstration of skill and strategic superiority. In an alley, the final confrontation takes place, where, thanks to dexterity, ingenuity, and the help of his allies, Pushkin neutralizes Dante's, not killing him, but completely depriving him of the opportunity to continue the intrigue. The city is again filled with silence. Only the crunch of snow underfoot, breathing, and a light wind remind us of the events that have just unfolded. And the poet, watching defeated enemy, he understands that his victory lies not only in the duel, but also in the ability to turn Petersburg into his own chessboard, where every movement, every step, and every rumor is used with the precision of a genius player. And now the city, allies, and information are under Pushkin's control, leaving Dante's helpless and disappointed. And the poet himself, not only alive, but also stronger, smarter, and strategically superior to everyone around him. With Dante's completely disarmed and unable to continue his intrigues, Pushkin, savoring the taste of final victory, slowly returns to the center of St. Petersburg, where a new silence permeates the city. The streets, lanterns, and snow-covered squares seem frozen in anticipation, while poets, writers, and Pushkin's trusted allies begin to gather in secret salons to discuss the consequences of what has happened. The poet uses this moment to strengthen his influence, gently directing rumors, placing trusted people in key positions, and demonstrating to society that even after the duel, he remains alive, strong, and unyielding. The public's attention gradually shifts to his words, and not to the intrigues of his enemies. Every reader and listener begins to understand that the mastery of words and observation have surpassed the blade. And now, St. Petersburg has become an arena where intelligence and courage are more important than strength. Pushkin uses this to build new literary connections, exchange ideas, promote his writings, and influence public opinion, all the while keeping an eye on the remaining conspirators. Understanding that even in victory, one must not let one's guard down, and that every ally must be tested, every street studied, and every letter an instrument of influence. The poet takes walks along familiar and new streets of the city, testing his networks, meeting with friends and secret informants, every conversation turning into an analysis, every action into a strategic move, and even moments of rest used to plan new moves, thanks to which Pushkin becomes not only alive after the duel, but also a powerful player in the politics and literature of St. Petersburg. The city gradually becomes accustomed to his presence, to his influence, to the fact that wit, strategy, and the art of words can be weapons no less powerful than the blade. The memory of the duel becomes a legend, where Pushkin is not only the victor, but also a strategist, a master of intrigue, and an observer whose intelligence and courage forever altered the balance of power around him, leaving Dante in the shadows and strengthening the poet's position as a man who knows how to survive, win, and turn every moment into an instrument of his own strength and security. After Dantes' final defeat and the exposure of his conspiracies, Pushkin feels not only relief, but also the power of his new position.
The city begins to live by his rules. Respect and fear simultaneously surround him. Literary salons open their doors to trusted people, and the poet's friends and allies become a network capable of controlling news, rumors, and influence in St. Petersburg. Every public reading, every publication, every conversation in narrow rooms with clay lanterns now becomes an instrument for strengthening power and influence. Pushkin masterfully manipulates information, directing public attention to art and ideas, distracting it from intrigues and enemies, while simultaneously studying the weaknesses of his remaining opponents and testing the loyalty of his supporters. City streets and alleys, lanterns and squares are transformed into strategic points, where the poet's every appearance creates a sense of power and control. His movements become predictable only to those he trusts, and his enemies are forced to act cautiously, fearing falling into a trap. Pushkin continues to use his literary talent as a weapon. Articles, letters, public speeches, and private meetings are transformed into a subtle network of influence, where every word carries weight and strategic value, and the city, like a living chessboard, reacts to his every move. At the same time, the poet does not forget about his artistic and philosophical plans, creating new works that strengthen his authority and enable him to control the cultural space. And rumors of a duel, that Pushkin has defeated a mortal enemy, become legend, causing enemies to tremble and simultaneously commanding the respect of friends.
At the same time, hints of future intrigues remain in the shadows, disgruntled nobles wanting to regain their lost influence, whispers of possible betrayals, hidden letters, and secret meetings. All this turns into an inevitable background against which Pushkin acts confidently and strategically, strengthening his position, turning a personal victory in a duel into a long-term influence on the life of the city, literature, politics, and society, leaving Petersburg under his intellectual and cultural power, and demonstrating that the power of the mind, courage, and strategy can be more important than any weapon, and the mastery of words is stronger than the blade, forever changing the course of life around him.